Parents across America, many sharing this, that they're outraged at their school districts for some incorporating critical race theory and other what they're calling woke policies. Most recently, parents in North Carolina heard the call to action after you see this. LGBTQ flashcards were used at a preschool classroom to teach colors. It was eventually pulled back, but it did get approved at some point. Our next guest says the solution to the problem is for parents to take lead on their children's education and possibly teach them at home. Well, welcome actor and evangelical Christian Kirk Cameron. Kirk, good to see you, and thanks so much.
Hey, man, great to see you.
For coming on.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to this topic because it's very important when you're talking about school children. But if I can broaden this out for you of
Sure.
what we've seen really in the past couple of weeks in Uvalde, Texas, with 19 children in elementary school going to class like a normal day, losing their lives, 2 teachers as well, and then what we've seen in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a shooting at a hospital we've seen in Buffalo, etc. But I wanted to touch base with you on faith because we talk about how faith gets shaken in times of tragedy like these. What is your reaction to that? You see lawmakers come out and it's legislation that wants to be implemented, but would you argue that faith needs to be restored?
Absolutely. These tragedies that we're seeing around the country are just indications of how important it is that we get back to the founding principles of our nation, which are absolutely rooted in a deep religious faith, a love for God and a love for our neighbors. And everything from COVID to all of the things that are being pumped into our children's hearts and into their minds through much of the public education system is contributing to the downgrading of mental health and moral character of the young people in our nation. And that's why I'm so excited to see this great awakening that's taking place. I think it's perhaps one of the most underreported stories and most important. Parents are waking up and taking back our nation by doing it the way our founders told us, which is to train up your children in the principles that lead to blessing and freedom and prosperity. And they're pulling their kids out of a system that is polluting their children, rotting their minds and their souls. And they're actually saying, wait a minute, we can teach our kids about the world. We can join together in rich community, pass on our faith and our values, develop children of character, families that flourish, and reinforce the principles that make for the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nations in the world. And the world can be our classroom. And millions of parents are doing it successfully. And COVID actually helped to water the seeds in these homeschool communities.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up. For homeschooling to be a mainstream conversation, maybe wouldn't have happened maybe 3 years ago. But with COVID, many parents were forced to homeschool their children.
That's right.
Yeah, sure, they would take it virtually, but explanation and helping through the schoolwork, that ended up happening with parents. Also, parents got to see what actually was being taught to their children, and you've seen it
Exactly.
with the school board. Kind of elaborate on that and really what COVID did.
Yeah, COVID gave parents a front row seat and shined a spotlight on what their kids were learning in schools. And many of them, even when their schools opened back up, kept their kids out and said, we're looking for different options. And one principle we got to remember is that darkness must flee when the lights are turned on. You don't need to try to beat back the darkness. All you got to do is shine the light. And COVID shined a spotlight on the content in much of public school systems for parents. They got a peek behind the curtain and saw that their children are being turned into little revolutionaries as prayer and the Bible and God and traditional American values are being pulled out and replaced with things like critical race theory, genderqueer theory. Children are being told that they can decide whether or not they want to be a boy or a girl and shown sexually explicit material at very young ages. It's shocking. And this has been the catalyst that is motivated parents to say, we want a parallel system. We have better options. There is so much flexibility and freedom outside of this system, and millions of parents are doing it well. And I document the whole thing in The Homeschool Awakening that is in theaters June 13th and 14th.
Okay, and how can we find out? You have a website as well.
Yeah, go to thehomeschoolawakening.com. And there you can reserve your tickets. It's in theaters 2 nights only, and some theaters are already sold out. So reserve your tickets early at thehomeschoolawakening.com.
Kirk Cameron joining us live here. Kirk, good to see you, and thank you for taking the time for our viewers today. We do appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, bro.
You
Take
got
care.
it.